So I think the full moon revealed the battle lines pretty clearly, meaning because Leo Aquarius cuts across the American legal system house, the ninth, literally Leo. The other side, Aquarius, relates more to media and information flow. Point is, though, that when you have a full moon in that type of alignment, what we see is a battle between the executive and the judiciary. And, of course, complete with, the South Africans' explanation at the White House of what he's doing is to restore democracy, which is, quite farcical. It's a really bad explanation, obviously. But, of course, he's the one that is dealing with Saturn now and into the middle of next month. So I doubt that he's going to get anywhere near what he's looking for. And in the meantime, as far as the personal side of the full moon, what I can report is something that I've seen before quite a few times. The night of the full moon, when it's most intense, it just seems harder to sleep. And that's exactly what happened, that kind of thing where one is sleeping but not really getting deep. And so doesn't feel as satisfying as, let's call it, regular sleep, although nothing catastrophic. And in fact, overall, what I always notice about the full moon is that there will be periods during the 3 days when my mind is unusually clear and I have better understanding of either new things or things that I already understand but with extra clarity. And then I'll notice that I'll get inevitable low periods, sometimes because of something I do and other times a little more inexplicably. But either way, that's the full moon energy as I've noticed over the years. Now, back to the current situation. Something that people are still expecting is perhaps with the eclipses in March and for other reasons that big revelations will happen to somehow remove Trump from the presidency. I mean, first of all, I would welcome that. It would be great if such a thing happened. Do I personally think that it'll happen? No. But again, I am 100% happy to be wrong on that account. And I think overall, the best strategy for everyone in these tense times is to prepare yourselves for the fact that we are very likely to have a GOP administration for the next 4 years. That doesn't say the same thing about Trump at the head of it, though. That is more questionable, particularly even in the near term, and not just in the near term. There are quite a few bumps along the way, but certainly in the near term, meaning especially March for him, is quite tricky, and things could go badly wrong there. And by badly, in capitals or in quotes, I mean to his health, to his well-being, something along those lines. Of course, we now are hearing that he's ready to talk to Putin and he's going to solve the Ukraine issue right away with Putin. Given that he's just entering into a Saturn period, I would say that's unlikely to be solved quickly, in the short term at least. Now here's the problem though. All of that is looking at the next 6 to 8 weeks. The problem is that both Trump and Musk have better astrological energy once we get into April, May. And in fact, I would say that April, May are probably the most dangerous in terms of their ability to implement something, to bring it forward and make it happen. But at the same time, I think we're fortunate that the beginning of these objectives, of this, some people call it an assault, the way they're doing it, is happening with strong Saturn energy, because then the likelihood of being pushed back increases. And so then if they get some victories, it's because the terrain is a little better, but we have to hope that they're not going to be nearly as significant. Because if it gets established now, in the next month and a half, that the judiciary is holding, and especially if it goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court stands up for the rulings, then what happens in April and May not be as damaging. And that's all we can do. Now, the other thing that I've noticed is that some people comment with exasperation that why should we relax? We need to get mad. Well, when I say relax, I mean in the personal sense, finding your refuge, finding a way to, no matter how mad you get, and it's perfectly logical to get mad at some of the things that are happening, always be able to return to your peaceful self. And if you think about it, if there's something you can do, some activity such as calling your representative, calling the government generally, or even something more than that on some kind of politically active level, that's of course great. But then you return to your peaceful self. You don't want to be tense and anxious all the time. That is very unhelpful. That is how mistakes get made. And also you won't see clearly. The key in the environment we're in is to be as calm and centered as possible, so you can discern clearly what is really happening. And I think at the moment we haven't seen many of the effects yet, and that is when you'll know what is happening. For example, they talk about they're going to cut this, they're going to do this other thing. The point where it's known, then you know that something is happening. But right now, it's mostly speculation. It's mostly projections that they're making, and in a lot of ways they're testing the waters, I think. And that's what's happening. And my advice is don't get too worked up, because there's where you have to look at the fact that this is much more a marathon in terms of the time we're likely to deal with here than a shorter span period. And other than that, the bigger picture, I continue to be optimistic based on the big cycles, because you have to realize that this is now a world problem. It's not just happening here. It's happening in France, for example. I saw a headline today about how difficult the situation is in France and in other democracies. The far right is pushing into many of the Western democracies, and it is making people really nervous. It's call it the struggle of our day, of our time. But I think we can get through it, because when I look at the patterns as we move into the second half of the 2020s, the energy moves in a better direction. The unfortunate part is that we have to endure it. But these periods can be also incredibly, I'm not going to say self-fulfilling, that's being a little too optimistic, but definitely very helpful for self-knowledge, in that because there is an urgency, because there is definite danger, I need to make decisions, I need to be aware, you can grow more and your life will improve if you take the opportunity, of course. If you don't, then who knows, maybe you'll have to get a prescription to calm yourself down. I definitely don't recommend that. I recommend that you do your best to do it organically, find your center, and move along that path as we go forward. And then for the immediate time, let's see what happens in March. That'll tell me a lot, because this is when Musk is facing a lot of Saturn. Well, I'm saying March, but really it's already now and then into the first couple of weeks at least of March. And at the same time, the energy is moving in on Trump as well. And by looking at what's happening, I'll be able to get better visibility for the months beyond that. And remember what I said too, that this is the spring of 2025, even though in the summer, and especially I would say April, May, they do have better energy to work with. They go toward other major bumps as we go later into the year, and especially in 2026, which is an election year. And I know again that people will say, well, no, you're being naive. There will never be another election again. I disagree. I believe there will be more elections, including the midterms, and that's what we have to play with, although of course we count on our representatives, which by the way, you notice they're rising up more, just like the general public is also being more present to the situation, which is what you would expect in any democracy, but also you would expect it with the hard angles that these people are facing. And so, but we obviously count on them to look out for us. You know, if there's something happening in voting systems, we count on the Democratic Party to work to correct those problems, and I believe that they will. And in the meantime, bottom line, let's all hang in there.